Many NFL teams get good teams that actually were supposed to be good and Super Bowl winners and fail miserably. I mean, when you look at things, it's got a competitive balance with a lot of things. So, anyhow, teams that are the one seed are expected to be your conference champion and to go to the Super Bowl. Many times it does happen that the one seeds do make it to the Super Bowl in both the AFC and NFC. And at times they meet each other in the Super Bowl, which is actually a rarity in this day and age because anything can happen. But the fact of the matter is, one small mistake can decimate a one seed. And this is a perfect example. We're going to talk about the 2005 Indianapolis Colts, a team that should have won their divisional round match and gone to the Super Bowl, but they didn't. So get ready. I said, are you ready? Are you ready for some Cutter What If NFL football? A weekend invasion! Yeah, it's Cutter talking to you live. We got the hits and the misses. So come join me for all the fun. All the rowdy fans come in. It's the weekend, y'all. Are you ready? Yeah, let's do this, baby. Yes. So let's talk about the Indianapolis Colts. Now, we actually did a video on the Baltimore Colts and all that. And we didn't mention the Indianapolis history because, the Baltimore Colts are kind of separate than the Indy Colts. But anyway, a quick refresher. So the Baltimore Colts, well, Baltimore had an AAFC, or All American Football Conference team from 1946 to 1949. Of course, the AAFC was competing with the NFL in the 40s. And then all of a sudden, there was a merger. Baltimore got a team in, and then after a year, they folded and went to New York to become the Yanks. And then that team folded to become the Dallas Texans, and then that team folded to become the Baltimore Colts. So the Baltimore Colts were good with Johnny Unitas and co. winning a few NFL titles, and then going to Super Bowl III as the heavy favorites. Despite the fact that Unitas got hurt and they had to use Earl Morrall at quarterback, the Colts still only lost one game and looked like they were going to beat the Jets in the AFL. Unfortunately, the Jets proved to be quite the bug in the buttermilk, if you will. Of course, the Colts would win the Super Bowl in Baltimore in Super Bowl V, but that was the Blunder Bowl against the Cowboys, in which there were 11 turnovers. Well, that's the second field goal, and the Colts won. Baltimore would struggle mightily along, and then hired Frank Kush, who was basically blackballed from Arizona State after his practice tactics were found out. Baltimore moved in the middle of the night to Indianapolis because the stadium proposal was voted down, and the city of Baltimore wouldn't give them money. So Irsay took the team to Indianapolis, who had the RCA Dome ready to go. Indy took a while to get accustomed to the NFL, and then a few years later, they picked up Eric Dickerson in a 3-team trade and thought they were going to do quite well. They did make the playoffs in that season, but other than that, they just couldn't do anything. The Colts were a laughingstock in the early 90s, alongside the New England Patriots. But Indy started to pick up ground once Peyton Manning was made the number one pick in the 1998 NFL Draft. And then getting rid of Marshall Faulk, which was a dumb move to St. Louis, could have hurt the Colts. But they picked up Edgerrin James in the 99 draft, and the rest is history. Good running attack. So the Colts, of course, with Peyton and Edgerrin James, Marvin Harrison, Reggie Wayne, and a good defense. And a kicker from Oakville, Ontario, Canada, close to where I live. Anyway, we'll talk about the 2006 team later. But of course, 2005 team. The 2006-07 team won the Super Bowl over the Bears, like everyone predicted them. And then 3 years later, they were supposed to manhandle the New Orleans Saints, but they fumbled it, and Tracy Porter had the winning pick six. Then the Colts would be good. They would have great playoff runs, but Peyton Manning could not beat Tom Brady for a shit. And, that's what happened. Anyway, Tom Brady was in Peyton's head. The simple fact is that the New England Patriots aside, the Colts just couldn't do anything about it. And practically everything else happens for a reason. The Colts have had some great strides and all that. Unfortunately, though, in the past like 6, 7 years. They're known only for having a week one a different week one quarterback. Ever since Peyton Manning was forced out because of neck problems. So the fact of the matter is that the Colts have got to find a steady quarterback after Andrew Luck made his famous retirement during our preseason game. I don't know why. Nevertheless, we'll talk about the 2005 Colts and all that. So the 2005 Colts was the 53rd season in the NFL, the 22nd in Indy, and the fourth season under Tony Dungy. The Colts won 12 games the previous season and then jumped a few to 14. They had a 13-game winning streak. They were 13-0 to start the season, and it looked like they were going to win Super Bowl 40. The Colts got a lucky bounce as the Broncos beat the Patriots in the division round, so that meant they had to beat Pittsburgh and all that. But of course, they couldn't believe it. They actually set an NFL record by winning 12 games in which they never trailed at any point in the contest. So they started the scoring and won the game, if you will. The 2005 Colts were the first team to start 13-0 and lose their first playoff game, although the 2011 Packers would join them after being manhandled by the Giants. And they were the first team to start 13-0 but not make the Super Bowl, much less win it. The 2007 Pats, who were 16-0 in the regular season, would repeat that. The Colts started 14-0 in 2009, lost 2 straight games, but couldn't make it to and lost that Super Bowl. The 2011 Packers started 13-0, went 15-1, but lost to the Giants, and the 2015 Panthers, who went to the Super Bowl after starting 14-0, but lost to the Broncos. Anyway, the Colts had a busy offseason. They needed to sign Edgerrin James to a new contract. So the Colts couldn't do anything, but they gave him the franchise tag, which was a way to keep a player on the roster for one more year, but for a larger salary than specified in the contract. The Colts also signed Ryan Diem to a 7-year deal at the right tackle. They let Marcus Pollard, the great tight end, move to Detroit in the offseason. In the draft, not much happened. Dave Rayner, a kicker from Michigan State, was drafted in the 6th round, and Anthony Davis, a good running back from Wisconsin, was drafted. Nevertheless, the Colts carried only 2 quarterbacks, Peyton Manning and Jim Sorgi. Well, they didn't have Joseph Jefferson. He was hurt. Rocky Calamus, an Oklahoma alum, got hurt. Well, anyway, running backs Edgerrin James, James Monroe, and Dominic Rhodes were doing their jobs. Wide receivers Marvin Harrison, Brandon Stokely, wow, Troy Walters, and Reggie Wayne. Tight ends the great Dallas Clark and Ben Utrecht. Offensive line Ryan Diem, Tarek Glenn, Dalen Gandy, Ryan Ledger, Jeff Saturday, Jake Scott all took places. Defensive line Raheem Brock, Dwight Freeney, Robert Mathis, the big boys Corey Simon. Linebackers Gary Brackett, Cato June, and David Fortin. Jason David, Mike Doss, Nick Harper, Kelvin Hayden, Dexter Reed, Bob Sanders in the backfield. Special teams. Jose Cortez was a kicker at one time, but then VanDerChOke took the kicking job, and Henry Smith was the punter. In the regular season, yeah, they won 13 games. They lost to the Chargers on home turf and in Seattle. Other than that, they were perfect. It was like perfection. The Colts would beat the Cardinals on the final week, but that was only because, well, anyway, Tony Dungy made his return to the Suns after the death of his oldest son and all that. Colts were 14-2. Yep, and Tony Dungy had to deal with the fact that his eldest son was found unresponsive in his apartment. He was 18 years old. And in 2006, it was found out that he had hung himself. Why? I don't know. Anyway, Tony Dungy had to take over in a sense. Well, anyway, they would take on the Pittsburgh Steelers with Dick Enberg and Dan Deerdorf on the call. It looked like the Steelers were going to be screwed over. The number 6 Steelers had to go to Cincy for the wild card game and beat the Bengals and make sure that the Bengals kept losing postseason games. Worst of all, Kimo von Offeren smacked Carson Palmer so hard Palmer was hurt, and it ruined Cincy's season. Nevertheless, the Steelers were up 14-0 thanks to Roethlisberger passing touchdowns to Anton Randall and Heath Miller. Jerome Bettis made it 21-3 in the third quarter with a touchdown. The Colts rallied. Hayden threw a touchdown to Dallas Clark, and they went for, well, an extra point. And then Edgerrin James made a 3-yard touchdown run, and they went for 2 to make it 21-18. Anyhow, Manny was sacked on 4th and 16 with a minute 20 left, and it looked like the Steelers were going to just kneel it and all that. The Steelers could have kneeled, but they also knew that the Colts had all 3 timeouts, so practically they would lose time. So anyway, the Steelers decided to go for a run. Bettis actually was close to punching it in for the touchdown to end the game. He fumbled, and Gary Brackett popped it. Nick Harper, the defensive back, recovered the ball, and it looked like the Colts were going to get the touchdown to win the game, possibly. But Ben Roethlisberger somehow near midfield swiped at Harper's ankle, and the momentum made Harper fall down. The Colts would get to the 28-yard line, so it'd be a 45-yard field goal by Mike Vanderjagt, who had been perfect at home in the playoffs and one of the most accurate kickers in NFL history. Sorry, Gary Anderson. But Vanderjagt would miss wide right with 17 seconds left. The Steelers ran out the clock, and that ball was not even close to making the goalpost. The Colts were the first 1 seed to lose to the 6 seed since the 1990 expansion of the playoffs from 10 teams to 12. The Steelers would use their momentum to go to Denver, beat the Broncos in the AFC title game, and then somehow beat the Seahawks in the Super Bowl. Of course, the Steelers used the gadget plays, the refs making inappropriate calls on the Seahawks, and the fact that Jerome Bettis would be playing his final game in Detroit in his hometown. So that's what happened. It was a big upset of sorts. Vanderjagt really missed that field goal, and that was actually the beginning of the end for Vanderjagt, as he was replaced with Adam Vinatieri for the 2006-07 season, in which they won the Super Bowl. Because I remember it was Vinatieri making those extra points in the Super Bowl and not Vanderjagt. Vanderjagt, I believe, went back to Toronto to the CFL, but nevertheless, that was a big boo-boo. Although Ben Roethlisberger's swiping tackle saved the day. So anyway, I don't know what it would have meant. So what if the Colts had won that game and faced the Broncos in the AFC title game? Let's find out. So we have the Denver Broncos at 13-3 taking on the 14-2 Indianapolis Colts. Of course, the Colts were the 1 seed, so they obviously would host the Broncos. Broncos took care of the Patriots, so let's see if Peyton Manning can get out of it. Of course, rather only applicable to outdoor stadiums. So anyway, the Broncos would get the ball first and had to punt. Peyton would throw an interception to John Lynch, the former Bucs icon, and no score through the first quarter. The second quarter, so the Colts go on a 4-play, 64-yard drive from their own 35 as Stokely made a great 40-yard catch, and then Edgerrin James got 23 yards. On second goal at the 1, Peyton threw a touchdown to Jamar Fletcher, making it 7-0. The Colts would use an 11-play drive near the final few minutes of the half as Dominic Rhodes got a touchdown catch from Manning, made it 14-0. Denver could not do the job. Third quarter, the Colts had the ball, but nothing else. There was a battle of punts till the fourth quarter. When the Colts scored another touchdown, Dominic Rhodes decides to run for one, and it's 21-0 Colts. Denver did kick a field goal to make it 21-3, but it was practically over, if you will. So at 21-3, there was nothing much Denver could do. They could score touchdowns, but they did. Plummer to Rod Smith for a catch. They went for the onside kick. The Colts recovered, and they went for a few yards. On 4th and 4, Vanderjagt from 50 yards kicked the field goal, and the Colts won the game 24-10. As you can see, Brian Fletcher. Yeah, I said Jamar Fletcher. Sorry about that. Peyton Manning, the hero. Broncos 3 for 14 on 3rd and 4th down conversions. Colts 7 for 16. Rushing yards 158.96 for the Broncos. Passing 129 to 262. Colts crushed it. Tatum Bell 75 yards running. Plummer 12 for 25, 134 on a touchdown. Payton 18 for 27. That's 67%. 268, 2 touchdowns, and an interception to John Lynch. But who cares? VanDerChok and Leland both only made 1 field goal. So the Colts would have gone to Super Bowl 40 in Detroit, and I believe they would have been the road team. Yeah, they would have been the road team because Seattle had played in their blue jerseys. And of course, as always, when we do one conference, we leave the other conference alone. So do all that and make sure that Seattle is set up perfectly. I think Jackson's a little higher than PJ Hackett, Peter Bork. All right, here we go. In the Super Bowl, the Colts played. Seattle would go first with the ball, and they had to punt. The Colts used a 7-play, 77-yard drive as Manning threw a nice pass to Harrison, who goes into the end zone, touchdown Colts. 7-0 Colts. In the second quarter, not much happened. Seattle, with under a minute left, was at their 41. They had a few calls go against Indianapolis. They go for a field goal, 47 yards, make it 7-3 Colts at the half. Third quarter saw nothing. The drives were there, but nothing happened. Fourth quarter, so the Colts scored a touchdown as Dallas Clark got a touchdown catch early in the fourth quarter, make it 14-3. Seattle got the ball back after a few key plays, including Sean Alexander going for a touchdown. Morris pounded in. They went for 2 and got it. Jeremy Stevens made it 14-11. However, the Colts would kill 7 minutes off the clock, going for 12 plays, 58 yards, as VanDerChok made a 27-yard field goal to make it 17-11. It wasn't over yet. Seattle had the ball. At the 2-minute warning, they had it. On 4th and 3rd, Hasselbeck threw to Alexander 8 yards to the 19. The Colts 19. Alexander got a 7-yard catch. Seattle called the timeout. Alexander got a yard and ran out of bounds. So it was 3rd and 2. He was tackled for no gain. And then they went for on 4th and 2. Missed the play, and the Colts ended up winning the game. It was over. The Colts won 17-11. And the Colts would have won the Super Bowl. Super Bowl 40 would have been the Colts. Yeah. Peyton Manning, the hero. Colts 9 for 16 on third down. Seattle 5 for 14 on conversions combined. Rushing yards 104-71. Seattle had them. Passing yards was almost there. 161 yards. Sean Alexander ran for 100 yards. Didn't get a touchdown. That was Mo Morris. Peyton 21 for 24. Much better. Passing 7 for 8, if you will. 205 for 2 touchdowns. Hasselbeck 15 for 26. 191. VanDerChok made their field goals, and the Colts would have won the Super Bowl, given the dream to make VanDerChok giving a Canadian a Super Bowl ring. But what can you do? Anyway, I'm Jeff Diamond. I do.